as a black woman, as a woman of color, as an African woman, as an African American woman. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I will be talking to you about the effects of racism, my experience with racism, knowing what's going on in the world, rest in peace George Floyd, the uprising, the protests and everything that's going on. I felt like it was important for me to come here as a black woman, as a woman of color, as an African woman, as an African American woman, as someone in an interracial marriage, as the mother to a mixed child, to come here to talk to you guys about not only my experiences with racism, but what's going on right now and how it's going to affect every single one of us in the future. I know this is a deviation from my usual topics, but it's important for us to address these issues 20, 30, 40, 50 years down the line when we look back at whatever change this period is going to affect, because it is going to affect a change. We want to make sure that we are and we were in the right side of history, and we used our voices, we used our platforms, and I will be doing myself a disservice if I don't come here to talk to you about what's going on and my experiences in general. Now, it's funny that a lot of people are like, oh, well, I'm not racist because I don't carry a tiki torch and I don't, wear a KKK mask and I don't lynch people. That's like saying I am not unhealthy because I'm not 700 pounds. Racism rears its ugly head in so many shapes and forms. Yes, there are the KKK individuals that believe in white supremacy and lynch and all of that jazz, but there are also several types of racism that affects us on a micro level called microaggressions and several indignities, and also institutionalized and systemic racism that has put us in a position as African Americans where we have to work twice as hard to be half as good. So yeah, you may not overtly call me the N-word, but your interactions with me, your stereotypes that you harbor and sentiments you harbor towards me, some maybe unbeknownst to you actually are racist in nature, and it's worth us understanding that and acknowledging that. Have I encountered racism? Absolutely. I have not been called the N-word, thank God, but it's funny because I moved to the US when I was 17 going on 18, and prior to that all I knew about racism was what was in history books and what I watched on television, and that's about it. So in Nigeria I was just a net. I was just me. There was nothing else about me. There was nothing different. It was just me, dad, mom, everyone else. There were the light-skinned black people, there were the white people, there were the Chinese and Lebanese, but it just was as it was. I just existed. I can say that my existence in Nigeria can be compared to the existence of a white woman here, where you just exist. There's nothing else attached to you. You're not something before you become something. Like, for example, if I walk into a room, I'm a black woman first, before anything else. Before I'm an attorney, before I'm a mother, before I'm a black woman first. That didn't exist in Nigeria. Living in Texas, I did not also experience racism as much because I was in a cluster. I was with my sister and her friends and my friends. We were all Nigerian, we were all black. I did go on a couple of dates with guys of other races, but nothing serious, nothing significantly came out of it. I noticed a couple of stares back and then, but I didn't pay attention to it. And then I moved to New York, and in New York we are literally the definition of melting pot, where everyone you're interacting with is from a different societal background, from a different cultural background, sees things differently, and you guys are just meshed together. And I would never forget, it was my second semester in law school, where I was planning a birthday party at this restaurant, and I faxed over my credit card information for them to put a deposit in my credit card. And a couple hours after doing that, I got a notification on my bank account that someone had bought a flight to like Iran or something on my account for like $2,000. A debit card was still in my possession. The only thing that happened was that I faxed that information over to this individual, to the manager at the restaurant. So at some point in the transmission, either in the manager's office or someone in that area, not on my side, someone had gotten hold of my credit card information and made crazy charges on it. So I contacted the manager, and he even showed up, and I told him, listen, this is unacceptable. I need you to do something because now my bank account is on hold. My birthday's in the next 3 weeks. I can't even plan a party at your place or somewhere else because I don't have the funds. And basically, you know, Caucasian male looked me in my eyes and said, well, how do I know what you're saying is true based on your background? What do you mean based on my background? Basically, he was saying, how can he trust that what I was saying is true by virtue of the fact that I am a black woman and I'm probably either scamming or whatever the issue is. I don't know what what his sentiment exactly on his minutia level was with regard to, but it was laden with racism. It was laden with the fact that he couldn't take into consideration what I was saying. He couldn't believe what I was saying. He refused to believe what I was saying because of my race. And that's just like, okay, overt, right? Now to talk about systemic racism, I have been denied, purchasing a car or, purchasing an apartment. And I had everything. I had the credit, I had the funds, but something in the process, either it's like in a really affluent neighborhood in the Upper East Side and there are no black people in the building. And, for whatever reason, on paper I look fine and they meet me and they're like, okay, yeah, we really can't do this. And then you ask yourself, why did this happen? And by the time you cross all the options and you're left with only one that makes sense and that encompasses everything, it's racism. I am followed more in the luxury stores than when a white woman or a woman of Middle Eastern descent or Asian woman walks into the store. It's crazy because I make sure that when I'm going out, not only am I vlogging, but I'm also dressed nice, so that way I at least look the part. I at least look like I can afford a $5,000 Chanel bag, but I still get the looks. I still get followed around. The only time I don't get followed around much, guess what, is when I have my husband with me. When I'm alone luxury shopping, I like to vlog. And a lot of times when I'm vlogging, people will approach me, unless this is at a store that they really know me, they'll approach me and let me know that, sorry, you can't vlog here or you can't take pictures or whatever, which is odd because I see that Asian lady over there with a full-on vlogging camera and a stand, vlogging, and you're not saying boo to her. And the moment I say something, it then becomes confrontational, and I don't want to just fall into that stereotype or that expectation, so I just back out. So what do? A lot of times I have my husband come with me. He is a Caucasian. He is 6'5", 250 pounds. You are not going to tell him anything, and they don't. They let him vlog. He gets down on the floor, does all the crazy angles, does everything, vlogs with me buying the stuff, swiping my card, walking out of the store, and nobody says diddly squat to him. The only time anyone ever said something to him was at the Dior store in Milan when I was buying my Dior bag, and this was after we had almost like 25 minutes of content of vlogging, at which point it was kind of like, okay, well, come on guys, you know what I'm saying? Like, we were pushing it at that point. But yeah, you get my drift. That happens. It's not a coincidence. A lot of people tend to think that because we experience these things, oh, it's just in your head, it's a coincidence. It's not. Because when I was much younger, I didn't experience these things, and now growing up, I'm experiencing them now, and there's a reason for it. There's a reason for it because I'm in a different society. I'm in a society that carries... One second. Someone just woke up from her nap and wanted cuddles with mommy, so she is in the video. As I was saying, because we are in a society that's founded on institutionalized racism and systemic racism, and we cannot discount the effects of white supremacy on our daily lives. It also has to do with little indignities you get here and there. I have been fired from a company before for the mistake of my boss. Not my boss, but my supervising partner, who is a white male, but he was deemed to be more of an asset to the company than I was. So I wrote a brief and he proofread the brief. We submitted the brief. The client did not like the brief, and the client was threatening to go to a different law firm. And to save face and to keep the client, the overall managing partner decided to terminate my employment while keeping the employment of my supervising attorney, who was white. You're going to tell me that the fact that we are of different races has nothing to do with that? Absolutely it has. I'm viewed as expendable. I'm viewed as not valuable. And when stuff goes south, you ask the person who you believe is not, valuable. And that's me. that also raises ugly head in situations of policing. You all know that. As a matter of fact, I had a situation with a previous landlord who was, being very threatening via text messages when I was leaving the apartment, and I just thought that the best thing to do to prevent a crazy situation is to have the cops there, and I called the cops just to come to the apartment while we were transferring the keys and doing the final walkthrough, and he was livid. He was really upset about the fact that I called the cops, and I told him I didn't feel safe. I did not like the way he was reaching out to me or the way he was speaking to me, and he proceeded to perpetuate the same behaviors in front of the police officers that made me call the cops in the first place. Now, had things gone south and I hadn't proactively called the cops, had he called the cops, I would have been the one who would have had issues down the line, because they were not going to believe what I say, because he was the one who called the cops. So even when I did call the cops, I was able to ameliorate the situation, but not enough for it to have the effect that I wanted. I've been in situations where I was walking down the street and I literally saw a man who ran a red light and hit a couple. They both died on the spot. I was traumatized, called 911, and the cops showed up at the scene. And I was at the scene waving them down, telling them, hey, I am a witness, I observed this, I saw this happen. And they wouldn't even talk to me. They're like, later ma'am, later ma'am. I'm like, I am the only witness here. Like, do I not exist to you? You see what I'm saying? So if you have that kind of perception, tell me why when you stop me or anyone who looks like me, Sandra Bland, Breonna Taylor, or anyone, you'll think twice before applying excessive force. You will not. It's just something you're not going to do. It's also implicit in the fact that in the workplace you get referred to as angry when you're assertive. I will never forget a situation in the workplace where I was on protected leave and I wasn't supposed to be doing any work, but I was doing some work regardless. And it got to the point where I was bombarded with a lot of work and expected to do so much work while on leave, and I informed the partner in writing that, listen, I had explained to you that I was going to do some work and I'm down with doing some work, but I'm on protected leave right now and I should not be doing a lot of work, and I'm not going to respond to emails that are not in the confines of what I discussed with you and the parameters as far as the work that I will do while on leave. And the response basically sent me an email telling me, oh, I don't know why you're so angry. So I am expressing my concerns, I am drawing boundaries, delineating my expectations, but then I'm viewed as angry. That in and of itself is problematic as well, because buying into the stereotype of the angry black woman. And that's a stereotype as well, which does also laden with racism and racist behavior. So racism exists in so many forms. A lot of times it's subtle, but it's there. Subtle, it's very present. It's present in my interactions with law enforcement. It's present in your interaction in the workplace when you're the only person of color, which I am always the only person of color. And even when you're not the only person of color, you're still treated as the only person of color there, because the person of color is going through individual struggles that may not be reflected in the collective unit. So racism raises its ugly head in so many shapes and forms. It raises its head in maternal health. As we know, African American women are more likely to suffer from complications in childbirth leading to death, 3 times more likely than Caucasian women or women of other ancestral descent. That's not a coincidence, and because of that, I am so happy that I had 2 African American maternal fetal medicine specialists observing me and monitoring me during my pregnancy, during my high-risk pregnancy, which thankfully resulted in the birth of this little girl. But yeah, that's important. That's something that you have to take into consideration. Black women complain all the time. People don't listen. Black women tell people, oh, I don't feel good. And it's like, oh, you'll be better. Next thing you know, African American woman is actually in pain or worse, dead. The same thing happened to my sister. She came from Nigeria to the US to have her first child because she wanted better health care here. And she had a child in December. In February, she was still bleeding. She had been to the doctor in December, in January, and told him, listen, I'm still bleeding, and I'm not supposed to bleed more than 6 weeks after C-section, maybe 10, maybe 12, max 12, and this is 14 weeks, I'm still bleeding. They eventually did an ultrasound when she went back to Nigeria, and they found that inside her was left a part of the baby's placenta. So she had retained placental matter, and she had to undergo 2 surgeries to get everything out. Now, had the doctor paid attention and discussed her healthcare issues, all of that would have been prevented. thankfully got caught and she didn't have sepsis or any other kind of crazy infection, but it's worth taking a pause. So I am glad this is happening. I'm glad people are protesting. I'm not about the looting or the riots or destruction of property. No, I am for the message though. People are finally getting to pay attention that racism is not all about being a member of the KKK, wearing hooded masks and lynching and all of that. That's in the extreme form. In our everyday life, it affects us on a level where it's in the system, it's in the educational system, it's in the healthcare system, it's in the prison system. We all know that those are areas of institutionalized racism, policing. And it's also in our everyday lives with regard to microaggressions and little indignities that we suffer on a daily basis based on the color of our skin, being followed around when you are at a store, or being stopped unnecessarily while you're driving, which may or may not result in you losing your life, as we have seen with George Floyd and, you know, Philando Castile and many other African American individuals who will not make it in the history books. So this is my 2 cents with regard to racism. I would love to share more, and I probably will. Let me know your thoughts below, and we can do this as a series and we can discuss. In the interim, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys in my next video. Bye guys.